Big pressure.
Yes.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and get started. It's good to see everyone. It's been a while since we've had a classic conversation, and I'm really excited to have this one today. We've got 3 great topics, but before we jump into the topics, I've got a couple announcements that I want to share, and this is a good opportunity to do it. First, Euroshop. I mean, is anybody here going to Euroshop? Nope. All right, so that makes it even better, actually. So Katina, Kevin, and Jen are all going to Euroshop, but what Katina is going to do is something she's done before. She's going to take photos and she's going to do a video at the end of the day for 3 straight days. We're going to share that video, that short video, 2 or 3 minutes. She's going to give you impressions, but we're also going to share a lot of photos from Euroshop in kind of pseudo live time, which means that she's going to be there, I think, on the 26th, 27th, and the 8th. So on the 27th, 28th, and 29th on the Classic blog, we're going to post those photos and we're going to post the video too. I'll promote it on social media, but if you're interested in kind of what design trends are happening at Euroshop, definitely go to the Classic blog sometime on those days, the 27th, 28th, and 29th of this month. And then also in March, Katina and one of the designers from Condit is going to have a design trends webinar. That's at the end of March, I think the 28th of March. It just got recently moved, the 28th of March. And Katina will talk about Euroshop, and the Condit designer will talk about Expo West, the trends that are happening in Expo West. It'll be about an hour-long webinar. All right. Harold, if you want to talk about Exhibitor Live and SKU.
Sure. First, I'm going to start by mentioning, I'm not sure what Classic Management was thinking, but they gave me the keys to the car and told me that I could help Classic organize a distributor gathering at Exhibitor Live coming up. So I want to share, first of all, a save or reserve the date. If you're even considering coming to Louisville for the show, Monday, April 24th from 5 to 8 p.m. We'll be sending out invites, but if you want to just put that into your phone now, just to have it set aside. We have, look, how many events have we all been to, you know, cocktail receptions, etc., at various shows? And to me, you know, 2 minutes after they're over, they all get piled into the same folder. Unmemorable, kind of forgettable things. I've always shared, and I just had this conversation with Mel a few minutes ago, that I think the goal of these meetings and gatherings is to, you know, not just goodwill, but I want to give good memories. I want people to remember what we do. So the party that we've got scheduled is at a very, very unique location. It's by invite only. You can only get in with us. And keep your eyes out soon. Save that date, Monday, April 24th, 5 to 8 p.m. And as Mel kind of teased, if I could give you more information, some of you might actually say, I'm going to Exhibitor Live just to attend the Classic party. Don't tell Exhibitor Live I said that, but it's going to be a fun event that you'll probably enjoy.
And here's a little hint. The event is going to be a home run.
It's not going to be a horse race. That's true. Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily narrow things down with Harold.
Point. Mel, can I mention our upcoming training opportunity?
Yeah, go ahead and talk about SKU, Harold.
So we had our first SKU a few months ago for the first time in a few years, extremely well attended. And I'm not embarrassed to say it was my first time attending a Classic training. If you've been there before, you know how good it is. If you've not been, I couldn't urge you any more strongly to either you or your team to attend. June 22nd and 23rd, that's a Thursday and Friday. We'll be holding our next one. You want to put that on your calendar as well. It's going to be chock full of information, enjoyment, and Portland food. It's always good.
What's the best way to...
All right. Thanks, Harold. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the topics if we can. So the very first topic that we have is any sale a good sale? So I think we've all been in the situation, I think we have, where you may have had to turn down a sale for one reason or another. And I'm kind of curious, based on the group, what kind of sales you've turned down, for what reasons you've turned them down, and if there has been a trend that you've been able to accept more here lately, or you've not been able to accept more lately. I'm opening the floor. You know, if anyone wants to kind of jump in first, please do. So what do you see out there?
Well, I had one just the other day. You know, I'm in a new company. You know, they've done a lot to accommodate me at this new company. So of course, you know, I'm trying to pay off my the price of admission for me to be at their company. And so I'm looking at every single opportunity, and a company was a referral from a friend, brought an opportunity, and it was just going to be one of these races to the bottom. And they kept talking about budget, and their project wasn't really that well funded to begin with. And I said, you know what, if you're just going to be focused on that piece, I said, my recommendation is stay with the company you're at, call the president and just tell him you don't like the rep you have. But if the price point's what's working for you, you may as well just stay with them, because I don't think anybody else is going to want to touch this project. And so she appreciated that approach. You know, and of course, you know, it's still $100,000 job. So I don't like turning away projects like that. But, you know, I had a feeling that we would be trying to see if we could get within $1,000 of the other job. And I'm like, it's just not worth it.
Kim, can you tell us, have you worked with them in the past and this time you just said no?
I hadn't worked with them before, so I didn't have that personal connection. It was a good friend of mine, though, who had given it to me. But it just smelled like it was going to be a problem, you know. And then, of course, like freight will end up going higher, or labor will end up going higher, and then they'll come back to me with, well, you said it was going to be this amount of money, and you know, as we all know, those things are budgetary items. So I just didn't feel like it was going to be a collaborative relationship. As far as that part goes. So I just said, thanks, but no thanks. Danka, but no danka.
You know, I hear that. And when you said it's $100,000 budget-ish, I'll bet there's more than a couple people on this call that might not have turned that down. Does anyone want to take that side of the conversation? Really? You
And
all
to be
would
clear
turn it down?
too, the 100,000 had to include show services. So, you know, I can control my booth. I can control my booth and graphics and stuff. The rest of it, it's a crapshoot. I mean, I can't control drage. I can't control electrical. So all those were going to like.
All right. Hey, Chuck, go ahead. You're on mute, Chuck.
If they can answer the question, do you want it cheap? Do you want it fast? Or do you want it good? Then we can talk. If they can't answer that question, then we're game over.
Yeah, but Glenn, you're the top of the food chain. What would your salesperson who lives from not paycheck to paycheck, but is, you know, he doesn't have to build it. Your team needs to build it. So salespeople hear 100,000, and are they backing away, or are you telling them to back away?
Well, first, I don't think anybody else thinks I'm at the top of the food chain, but that's another question. But that's when I do start negotiating internally with the salesperson and say, if you're willing to take a haircut on the margin, I'll take a haircut on the margin. And, you know, how much, what are the resources that are going to be expended to fulfill the order? And is it worth the drain on the entire company, not only, you know, your haircut that you're taking? So I just have an open business conversation with them about the true cost of us fulfilling that commitment.
Chuck, did you have your hand raised?
I did. I think Glenn's pretty much covered what I was going to share. I mean, the number sounds impressive, but at the end of the day, when you look at all the pain you might have to go through, and you know, what is the ROI on this? It really might be there, might not be there. And you know, are you risking burning your people out? Is the timing not realistic? You know, we're vetting a lot more now when we are being engaged with an opportunity, as opposed to maybe before, when we kind of were really open arms and let's jump at it. We're really looking hard at these now for those reasons. I mean, the floodgates are open now. People are coming out of the woodwork. Everybody's trying to make up for lost time. Everybody wants to get at it. And, all of those components can make for trouble. And there's a lot, we are hearing a lot, what can you do it for? I think some people, especially if they're new at the game, we've had a lot of turnover, right? A lot of companies have come back, but some of your old clients aren't there anymore, and they just don't know what the milestones are, what's involved, what the pricing is. And that seems to tend to have them come in and expect lower numbers than are realistic. So $100,000 sounds good, sure, but at the end of the day, what's there? What's left?
Yeah, at what cost? Jennifer, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just really going to piggyback on all of that. We've really dialed into, initially when we're getting leads in, what are our top qualifying questions, and it's budget and time, and can we do it and do it successfully? And beyond that, okay, client, if you can answer those questions, we can have a deeper conversation about what it is you're looking for. And then at that point, making the decision, are we going to continue to proceed here? We've had, just like Harold, I think you were just saying, all these people coming out of the woodwork. We've gone so far as to create a disconnect email where if they just drag their feet, it's a simple follow-up to say, you know what, when you're ready, let us know. We're going to put your project on hold for the moment. And that takes us out of the constant follow-up. If you're not interested, I'm not interested. I've got bigger fish to fry these days, but we've sort of closed that loop and put it back in their lap and feel zero guilt about not another phone call or email to them.
What sort of response are you getting from that kind of an email?
So two things. One is zero. They're fishing. I had one that would email me like an hour before she wanted to meet. Can we meet today? Well, no, I can't. And for days we went back and forth with scheduling, and I wouldn't hear from her for like 2 or 3 days. And so when I sent the email, she was like, oh, we got to get together on this. Like, can you meet today? No, I can't drop everything for you today, right now. And finally she just, if you can't find it in, the higher level of importance, I'm trying to I gave you lots of times and dates, and eventually they just flutter away. It's happened on 2 of them, and other ones, have been great responses. I'm so sorry it's taken me so long to get back, and we're doing some things internally. Let's follow up in a couple of weeks. Great, perfect.
Yeah.
So it really has helped for us sort out the serious people from the not serious people.
Nice. Gina, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just wondering, Kim, if I missed this, if you could share what size that booth was, and was it rental or purchase for $100,000? I'm just curious.
So it was a 20 by 40. It was at ICSC. It included AV, freight, labor, internet, cleaning, drayage. And so by the time you pull all that out, I mean, we're at 50,000 cost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and then they, then it's graphics, it's hanging sign. And I'm like, the margin for error on us to make any money is, I mean, we probably had like a $40,000 window. And if I could just take all stock stuff out of the shelf, fine, maybe we could have pulled it off. But I'm the newbie on the block. I don't want to come in and just do some low margin garbage project where all the risk is in us absorbing where the show services go awry, because you just can't control. Freeman and GES are really tricky these days. It's just not really a great model, in my opinion.
Kim, just out of curiosity, just between us friends,
Yeah.
was this all your decision, or did you share your decision with your new bosses?
I put it to them. I wrote up the program, and I said, if we want to turn this down, I completely understand. So I wanted to put it on them. I mean, if they were looking for business enough that it was worth it to take that on and just make a few dollars, then fine. But if they weren't, I didn't want them to feel obligated to accommodate that. I got to use my credits wisely. You can only ask for favors so many times.
So I'm curious if anyone's walked away from a 10 by 10 or a 10 by 20, either because of timing or because of price. Has anybody just said no? Dan?
We've had two, I would call them 10 by 10 or smallers in the last month. One was actually both were referred. Both of them had a week time frame, and both of them didn't have a qualified budget. One of them, their budget was 10% of what it should have been for a conservative 10 by 10. I think they were, you know, you could tell it was their first show. They got an opportunity to be there, and literally a week from Friday, when it was like a Thursday, you know, they needed to be on in I think it was in Baltimore. But along the island, there's two opportunities we have now. That one's a 20 by 20. Nice thing about that, it's a little farther out. It's beginning of fall, so they planned a little bit ahead. But they're in an expensive city. If you look at the SEER reports, they're in the most expensive city in the U.S. This show, it's the only show they do. Only when it comes regionally to the part of the country in Pennsylvania when we're at. So they do their own trade shows with their own vendors that they bring in, but they don't exhibit at third-party shows. And you can tell they came in with a budget that is basically 50 to 60. And they have a lot of custom requirements, and a rental obviously makes sense, but that is a loaded cost. They want everything included in that. And they want a lot of customization, so it's not that simple. Is it possible? Yeah, but it's a deliberation, and the time frame allows you to think about it, but at the same time, is it worth it? And I have, in comparison to that, I have a 20 by 30 rental, a little more of a standard, could easily fulfill it. I love the comment, Jennifer, that you made about I forget what you call it now, but the email that basically lets them off the hook. It's the
Disconnect
calling it off.
email. Mhm.
Yes.
Yep.
Fantastic. Because we have one of those. It was a referred opportunity from one of our great customers, but these other folks we don't have a history of working with. In 9 weeks is their show. It's within 100 miles of our location, so that makes it a little more palatable. But it's 9 weeks, and their budget was possible but tight, 20 by 30, and they came in on the high end at 55 loaded. And they said, well, we're a small business, so we get free flooring from the show. I says, well, that helps. But there's a lot of other expenses that they're not aware of because they don't exhibit, and they're bringing, I believe, 5 to 6 other partners into the booth space to exhibit with them. And we've been in that scenario very frequently. We get a lot of customers that do that. They go in jointly for a booth so they can go to a 600 square foot instead of just having an inline, and they'll do that with another company, or they'll do that with 4 or 5 others. And that takes a lot of coordination. Even if they're all split in the pot, they still have a very conservative budget, even for a rental, with all of the costs that are escalated. And I think that one I have to turn down because the time frame is going to be the clincher.
So one of the better parts of Gina and Mel's job is we get a chance to speak to so many different distributors, large, medium, small. And over the last 12 months or so, as things are starting to bounce back, I've heard more than a few times, let's call them custom houses, who don't traditionally focus on 1010, 1020s, who have made the decision that they're not only not going to, concentrate on those, they're not going to entertain them anymore. That's just not what their sites are aimed at. And they're creating different relationships with, let's call them friendly exhibit houses, where they'll take that lead or existing client of theirs and toss that 10 by 10 opportunity to a, call it partner exhibit house, who does that with their eyes closed. The details of, will they get compensation for it? Or are they just trying to help a client is different. But has anybody experienced that? Is anybody working in a situation like that or talking about doing something like that? Crickets. Okay. I retract the question.
And
No, I've had someone approach me about it in the early stage, and we have another local competitor that it's not tied to the space so much, or the size of the space, or the size of the program, but they don't want to do any services beyond the design build. Once the display's there, they don't want to be at the shows. They don't want to store displays. They don't want to distribute them, refurbish them. any of it, don't want to touch it. So we store their customers' materials with an agreement that we can't sell their customers any display design or builds. And we just do the service end, and we work directly with the customer, their customer, on all the back end, including all the paperwork. The billing doesn't even go to the other exhibit house. It goes directly to the end user.
Dan, is it a marketing agency or is it an
No,
exhibit company?
I used to do it for marketing agencies and still do, but this is an actual exhibit company.
Really?
Similar, it's a small house, similar to our size, that does not want to touch any of the services. They just want to do the design and the build. That is it. The owner's emphatic about that. Actually, we're about to bring on another customer, and their program is made up of all 10 by 20s, which is our sweet spot. And most of their shows are in the Pennsylvania or tri-state region where we are. So we can drive to most of them, set them up, but they want us to manage every facet of, including, hotel blocks for their sales teams and everything. And formerly they worked with this same company that we store other clients of this company's in our warehouse, and they're not working with them because they don't do service. And we're going to do the design build because we were approached independently from the end user in this case, which is a fantastic opportunity. I couldn't understand why you wouldn't have interest in doing those things, because that residual model, honestly, is so much better than trying to find a new build for every category and every month.
I know significant number of exhibit houses who make significant money on services alone. Turning your back on services that you're not even performing the vacuuming or whatever it happens to be, you're just filling out the paperwork. That's substantial. Jennifer, your hand was up.
So we've done something like that a few times in the past, and I have to say it's been a disaster. Like, the fact that your services aside, you're right, you can make some good money on that, which is how we viewed it. We can store it, we can order show services, like there's all those billables there. But what we found each time we've done it is we're managing someone else's junk. And the booths are a disaster, the installs are a disaster, like the client doesn't understand. So we were put in contact directly with the clients to work through services and install and all that. These clients were so clueless about everything, and we spent so much time and really didn't feel like we made enough money off of it for the effort we put towards. So I'm really interested that it seems so successful for you, what the difference is there.
I'm not saying it's remarkably successful. This opportunity that we have, this present one where we haven't brought the client on, but it looks like a 80-90% we're going to be, because they approach us directly. We had the opportunity to do this because their existing exhibit house isn't open to doing it. Working in conjunction with them, there's never quite the volume we expect. They always paint a rosier picture. Yes, they generally order low quality, bottom of the barrel exhibit things. Table throws come in, and sometimes the front piece doesn't match the back piece when they're all custom printed. I mean, this is the simplest stuff you can imagine, and it's not right. We had one we did for several years. Ultimately, the client decided to pull out from the other exhibit house. So as a result, we lost the business. So, if it could have been something they did that we weren't aware of. I think it had more to do with, in that case, it was a new marketing director, and we know how that can always change when a new events lead comes in. We have another one that we're doing now that we brought on a year ago, and it hasn't hit the volume that was anticipated, and it wasn't going to be a high volume account, and it still hasn't hit it. So I'm not saying it's perfect. The perspective that Harold presented, I think, makes a lot more sense, because I'm hearing, as we're a boutique sized team delivering that concierge experience to folks that have primarily inline programs that don't get that attention that ones that do all islands do. There are a lot of houses that I've talked to that don't want to deal with the inline programs unless they're doing a certain mix of larger spaces with that. I think that scenario could play out very well. But I haven't had the history of that working yet, because those discussions have just begun in the last few months.
So let me, Dan, let me add on to that a little bit, and then we'll get to you, Nicole, is two things. One, I recently talked to a custom house, some folks at a custom house, and they really put two criteria out there as far as accepting an order. One, it had the budget had to be at least 125,000. That was a minimum. That had to be a budget of 125,000 before they would accept the order. The second is that it had to be a program client. It couldn't be a one-off. There had to be a series of shows that they were doing, maybe a series of future builds. That's all they would accept. Anything smaller than that, they had identified another exhibit house like you, Dan, who would accept the smaller orders, and they pretty much just farmed those smaller orders out to them. They handle all the 10 by 10s, the 10 by 20. I don't know if there was any kind of finder fee that went along with that, but I know that they said they kind of washed their hands of it and let that other exhibit house or that smaller exhibit house handle it. All right. Hey, Nicole, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's not any surprise to you or Harold, but we and some others on this call, but that is very much how we have been growing lately is we do take that small exhibit busy program opportunity and that's our niche. And so we're able to support those clients, whereas another exhibit house who is larger and is looking for saws to be spinning cannot. So we're definitely in that space where we're getting the 10 by 10, 10 by 20. My exception to it, though, that I think might be a little different to Dan, what you've, at least your initial experience was, if they're not going to buy graphics or replacement counters, or, if they're going to go to somebody else for their things that they're shipping into us, that's where we draw the line, because again, we can't support what they're ordering through others. Now, if they order it from Wayfair and send it in to us, we just have to sort of groan and bear it. But we've got, if somebody's ordering crap banner stands that we need to be fixing every single time they come back in, we have to draw the line and say, look, if you order from us, we will support that work, and we won't charge you to go chase the part down. We won't charge you for that time. We won't charge you for, a little bit of time to fix something that we know is supposed to be quality, and, but we might need to retention it in the first couple of years. You don't get charged for that time. So, if we stand by it, if we buy it, we can't, and are very clear that if they buy it from somewhere else, it's going to cost them. It's not that we don't do it, but it is going to cost them to chase down, a $15 part and, the little hook at the top of a banner stand, if that's not one of the ones that we provided for them. So,
but Nicole, aren't you also supporting those clients with fulfillment and promotional products as well?
We are, and that has become very, very profitable business. We're counting. I played with the idea of getting involved with the promotional products. I don't know. Does anybody on here sell promotional products or done?
have.
We do from time to time. We manage a lot of it, which is a bear. It can be a bear.
It really is. It really is a bear. It is a moneymaker, though. So, and they often choose us because their other company will not. But it takes space, and a lot of us aren't really set up with that kind of space. We've recently expanded. We're now have our second location in Colorado, so we have space to grow that kind of program.
All right, Mel, have we tilled the soil enough here? Are we dry as a bone on this topic, or we got more?
I don't know. It's up to the group, but we can certainly move on to the next topic if you want. And I'm actually going to skip the second one and go back to it. And I'm going to go to the third only because I'm kind of passionate about it. And I've been passionate about it for at least like 15 years, and it has to do with rentals. And I feel like for 10 years of those 15 years, I was kind of beating my head against the wall, talking about rentals and the benefit of rentals and the misconceptions of what rentals were, and how they were presented in the industry. And I get a sense that that has shifted, and it was starting to shift pre-pandemic, but it's significantly changed post-pandemic. So I'm kind of curious in the group here is what kind of rental opportunities you're getting and how you're presenting those rentals. And the third part is how your clients are reacting or accepting rentals as a viable option for them. And I know everybody here has done rentals, so I know everybody has an opinion on it. So please, I'd love to hear from you.
I've been
Fire
doing
away,
it
Chuck.
for a long time. And I found that I mean, I had clients that bought exhibits and then they might have a, conflicting show and they rent and they love the idea that they can walk away from it. It looks custom, to just going with all rental. So I do probably most of my larger displays are rental projects. And sometimes it has to do with the budget. If they come in with a budget and I know they can't buy, and that, they want services, I'll recommend it. And everybody isn't recommending that. They're trying to sell. But it's like a yearly sale, really. I mean, all the clients I worked with last year, I'm working with this year on the same shows, handling their services. They're able to reuse some of their graphics or hanging signage. And it's a big money maker to me. I mean, the margins are the same. It's just, depending on what their budget is.
Do your clients still have a preconceived notion about what a rental is?
A lot of my clients I've been working with for years, so they know what I'm providing as far as customized exhibits. If it's a new client, I'll send them examples of rental booths, and let them know that it's really like a custom booth. No one's going to know that it's a rental booth. It's not like getting it from Freeman and having scuffed laminate panels and, junk graphics. So yeah, or even, provide them names of my other clients that are happy to talk to them. But usually it doesn't become an issue.
I don't know whose hand was up first. Harold,
Chuck is next.
Okay, go ahead, Chuck.
It used to be we would present the rentals as an option. It might be a situation where budget was a concern or it was frequency. They were only going once a year, or maybe exhibiting twice a year. But typically we would present rental as an option. What I'm seeing now is we're seeing clients come to us requesting rental right out of the gate, which is a big switch from the way it used to play for us. I mean, rentals were a solution, an alternative, a great alternative, but they're usually an alternative. The initial request was for a purchase. So I'm seeing that a lot more, and I'm seeing it in big custom islands. I mean, people are coming out, and they know now. People are a lot more educated. They know. You did that ad years ago. It's not just a typical rental. I forget, was the rental house or something, Mel, but it really hit the mark. I mean, people are a lot smarter now when it comes to rentals. They know that they can get a great custom look, a great island, as a rental. And so we're seeing that a lot more. So people are coming to us with the request.
And Chuck, do you think it's because they've seen it on the show floor? I mean, where is that knowledge coming from? Because I think there's still some hesitation in the industry to pitch rentals.
Well, probably on the show floor, word of mouth. There's no doubt about it. Peers talking to peers and whatnot. Some is marketing. We were lucky to have something in the Exhibit City News not too long ago. I mean, just things of that nature that come up. But I think word of mouth. I mean, we have a couple of clients that have been renting for a while now, and I know we've had a few referrals from them. So that plays in too. I mean, a good rental, you think it's a custom. I mean, but
yeah.
Times have changed.
All right. And you're next.
We've always had rental as part of our vocabulary. Our conversations we have on a yearly basis continue to add to our own stock of rental that we offer up locally. Sometimes it's based on budget, sometimes it's clients overlapping shows. Anything and everything is on the table for us. It's based on how those conversations go. We've had a lot in the last year of clients, they've done the same general layout for the last few years, and now we want to try something new. We've had a lot of new requests for a different counter or just something with a little bit different look, like they want to just swap some things out. And so that's really worked out for us. You know, we always have the conversation, especially with our larger clients that do a lot of shows. If you've rented it 3 times, you've essentially paid for it. So clients that were already managing their assets and storing and all this other stuff, a lot of times they'll try something and then, oh, I'll just buy it, you know, because value wise and in long term, you know, it costs them less, and I get to charge them to store more pieces in my warehouse. So
It's funny, Jan, I always use the example of leasing a car, and I'd be willing to bet I won't ask for a share of hands of people who lease their car instead of have purchased their car. And they would do it again and again and again.
mm-hmm.
And if I say to them, you realize you're paying a lot more for a vehicle over time than you would if you simply bought the car, they're like, I don't care. I want a new car. I want it to be reliable. I know it's going to cost more over time. And I feel like that's the same within the world of rentals. They just know what they want. They want to be able to make those changes. And even if you point out to them it's going to be more expensive in the long run, I feel like you're kind of you're working against their logic, because their logic is different than your logic as far as what they're trying to accomplish. Hey, Kim, go ahead.
I love rentals. So I've been selling rentals for a long time, and a lot of it has to do with what Chuck was saying, is that the caliber of the properties have just gotten so much better. I mean, we do backlight walls, we do edge lit countertops, you know, and things like that are a lot more customized than, as you guys have mentioned, you know, some of the general contractor stuff. And the other way I sell it a lot is that, you know, a lot of my clients tend to be in the tech sector, and the show sizes that they're in change so frequently that they can't really be pinned down to one size. And then also in the tech sector, you know, there's so much turnover and so many marketing people that come in that the look and feel changes all the time. So by not buying a piece of architecture that's going to be fixed, it gives them a lot more fluidity in the program. So I'll do 2 show packages, 3 show packages, but then I get the predictability of that sale over the course of, you know, typically a year. And so that helps us. And then I can also pull the properties from different regions. That also helps our workflow process too. So anyway, I love rentals. They're like my favorite thing to sell.
Mark, we'll get to you in a second, but Stacy, let's jump in with you.
So I'm probably the smallest dealer here, so I rely on rentals a lot. And my business model is really, I'm in a sweet spot of supplier diversity, which means they're not trade show people typically, and I'm willing to do the extra stuff. So a lot of times I'll either propose both options, or they tell me the budget and I recommend rental, and then I show them the examples. So I work a lot with Jim Shellman, of course, and I don't usually hold my own. I don't hold any of my own inventory. So I rely on Classic to keep the rentals in their inventory. And that's worked out well. I had one client that was international that we'd do several years of the same booth with graphics, and we'd hold the graphics and they'd tell me the configuration, or they might change a graphic, but they loved it because they didn't have to ship it. They didn't have to store it. They didn't have to, they could change certain assets. And every time, I've never had a client be disappointed. I just got back from NMSDC, you know, National Minority Supplier Diversity. And we did Cargill's rental booth. It was a 10 by 30. And she came up after and she said, "You made me look like a superhero. It was amazing." I was like, well, that's my job, is to make you look good. And she was just totally surprised, because I'd been for years looking at this ugly booth they kept renting from whatever show house, you know, the general contractor from the show. And I mean, it was pathetic. I was just like, oh my gosh, you're a Fortune 100 or a Fortune 50 company and you look terrible. I mean, I didn't say that, but I kept showing up, you know, hey, how we doing? I could probably do this better. But it has always been in my repertoire, I guess. And I rely on Classic 100% for all of the design aspects. We've done creative design. They've helped me with graphic design. So I'm just so small that I totally rely on Classic 100%. and they do a fantastic job. I've not had a client be disappointed yet.
Yeah.
And I
Mr.
do
Benson.
smell it. I sell the small stuff, the 10 by 10. Anybody want to send it my way? I'll do the 10 by 10, 10 by 20, banner stand, whatever. So, but I only
Thanks for
sell
the-
my stuff.
Thanks for the commercial, Stacy. Hey, Mark.
Yeah, what I've seen in the last 30 years is every time there's been an adverse event or a recession, there's been a change, either in graphics, 2001, 2002, it was let's bend some pipe and stretch some dye sub fabric over it, and all the shipping and drayage companies starved to death. And then the big real estate crash. Rentals suddenly went from being, and I think Jill said it, kind of, the gem system with the white center that's been used 6 times and the AGAM that showed. And then in the early 10s, with the systems with holes, the AGAM, AluVision, B Matrix, you started getting some really nice looking rentals and Moss Easy Wall, along with graphics. And people really saw rental as more of an upscale thing and a business solution, and didn't look at it as something that, you did on the cheap because you couldn't afford a nice vacation. But now, after the pandemic, one thing I've noticed is people used to have a show schedule. And it's, we have 5 shows, 2 20 by 20s, a 20 by 30, and 2 20 by 40s. And they were this month, this month, this month, this month in these cities. And they never overlapped. We had our conflicts all figured out. And all of a sudden, everybody was trying to have a show in the same 4 months and make back all the drayage they missed and everything else. And you had all these clients that just didn't want to make up their mind to do something new because they didn't know it was going to happen. And they wanted to use a little bit of their custom booth, but they wanted to flesh it out with rental. They didn't know if that show was going to be in June next year or if it was going to be in 9 months and it might step on another. So rental has really become a solution, I think, more because of the pandemic now than anything else. And the way people are just throwing darts at the wall to schedule shows.
Well,
Mr. Shulman, you're with us,
and
aren't you?
Mark, I'm sorry, Mark, you actually mentioned a trend there within your comments there that we're seeing a lot more too, which is the hybrid version of part purchase, part rental. That they may decide, okay, I'm going to purchase the tower in the middle, but I'm going to rent the components that go around it, so they can change it more and more. We're seeing that a lot here recently, where there is that kind of flow, and obviously we're able to do it because we do both the purchase and the rental portion of it. But that's starting to build.
Well, and as an independent designer, I love that because after the pandemic was over, people were like, I want to use this and this from my existing booth, but I want to try this and this for rental. And I kind of compared it to making a meal the day after Thanksgiving from leftovers in the fridge. And I would do a design and they'd go, yeah, it's a little dry. Let's do this. And I'd end up designing 4 or 5 times. And when you're charging for the hour, by the hour for design, indecision's a good thing. And a
Mr.
big
Shulman,
rental inventory to choose from.
Jim, I know you're listening in. Do you have any comments of what you're hearing? Maybe he's not listening in. Okay.
He should be listening. He's everybody's hero on this call.
He was on, maybe he had to jump off. Right, Mel?
Did anybody else have any other thing they want to share about rentals? Yes, go ahead, Dan.
Rentals are coming. People are coming now with that. There are still many that have no idea you can rent an exhibit, and I still think that's the majority. But there is a much more open perspective to it. There was a lead that Classic was kind enough to send us in the fall that had no ramp time. They basically had a month from the time we got the lead till their show. They had no concept of what they wanted. They wanted to design their content in-house, but it was going to take weeks. You hear weeks when you have 4.5, including shipping and getting the whole show up. And because we had an in-house, or we have a rental inventory, we were able to produce our own stuff and pull it off. But it took literally multiple shipments, and then a hurricane happened to happen which affected the shipment that got there. So we had to do part of the booth again and literally turn it overnight. And I flew down to Orlando as one of the folks just to help get it up. And it was unfortunately, it was like a one-off build because all of their marketing department changed after that. So we haven't been able to retain them as a client. Doesn't mean we can't do things in the future, but we need to build that back up. But literally, it took them over half of their time frame just to come up with the concept of what they wanted content wise on the booth. And then we had to pull everything off in 2 weeks from that to including shipping and get it there. And so rental allows you to do it, and they were willing to pay for it, but at the end of the day, it ended up being too many hoops for the price that it cost. It should have been more. Definitely.
Thanks, Dan. Anybody else have any? Yes, go ahead, Stacy.
I had a question. I mean, this last fall for me, all the clients that were bigger booths decided drastically to downsize because they weren't sure the industry was going to be around. I'm wondering how many others experienced that, and some of it became rental because they weren't confident that they show up that big. Have you guys seen the same thing?
Well, and the other reason was they wanted a lot of negative space because there was that got to stand 6 feet apart and put plexiglass on the front of all the counters. And that drove a lot of rental too. They just wanted less in the booth. And I think shipping less and draying less and saving a ton of money, that 6-foot social distancing was a nice excuse to lop a quarter of your budget off of your shipping and drayage.
Mm-hmm. True.
Did you have your hand up? Okay. Sorry, Mel.
Is anybody else seeing that? Are people still downsizing? Are they still making those decisions? Now we're a year and a half post-pandemic. Are they now going into larger booths?
I don't think they're downsizing as much as the indecision is there, and they just don't. Nobody wants to get married to a booth. They want a date, and it's like Tinder. It's like, well, I don't know if I'm going to like this in 9 months, and I might have a 20 by 30 instead of a 20 by 20 or a 10 by 20. So I'm not going to settle down.
Yeah, the inability to make decisions has been paralyzing for some people and has been extremely frustrating trying to, keep the project train moving forward.
Mark, I hope we're booth shaming people.
What?
You're not booth shaming us, are you?
No, I changing things all the time. I'm a fan of promiscuity and booth design.
I've had several clients talk about recession planning. It isn't the plan hasn't been necessarily executed, but there is this, 2 paths that they are looking at for what they're going to do. And honestly, rental's always a great solution for that because it goes into that month's budget and that marketing team's budget, and it's not a CapEx. So, but I have been hearing that. So
are you hearing a lot of anxiety about a recession?
Yeah, actually. I mean, we had a strategy meeting with one of our biggest clients last week, and she's like, there is recession planning happening. I mean, she's got her budget set fine for 23, but it's what's going to happen in 24 is still uncertain. So she's doing what she can now, but there's not big capital expenditures being approved.
Seems like most of the recession talk and the impact is really the tech industry. And I'm going to kind of tap into you, Kim, because you said a lot of your clients are tech. What are they telling you?
Well, I mean, like I worked with Oracle for 15 years and they had to cut $1 billion out of their spend. And so that meant firing a bunch of people and just squeezing budgets and such. So, they might have a bigger booth, but they don't have any money to pay anything in it. So, so we were doing that dance. But, I think across the board, I think the average right now is like 6% of tech companies are tech companies are laying off about 6% of their personnel. I haven't quite seen it hit the trade shows so much. I mean, there's still, because people book these booths a year in advance. So, for AWS, they're going to be a 20 by 20. They're not going to downsize that. So,
Okay, just real quick, somebody's audio is in the background, kind of. Thank you.
That was Jay.
Dan, then Jay.
Yeah. So
in December, we had 2 clients that took shows off their schedule because they exceeded their budgets by the end of the calendar fiscal. They didn't reduce their booth size. They just chose not to exhibit at shows that they had always exhibited at.
Was that because of shipping and drayage or other?
It was because of their budget allotment for events overall being exceeded on the prior events that already happened the majority of the year.
Yeah, I understand that, Dan, but when I'm asking you, it exceeded it. Did it exceed it specifically because of drayage and because of freight, or for other reasons?
They didn't. I know drayage is a factor, but the expenses of the people that went to the show were excessive, from hotel to travel and other meal expenditures. It was enough to discourage them from doing it, because they weren't going to do new booths for them. They would use existing assets. But they just looked at it as a whole, and drayage is a factor on that. And these were island booths, but they were not heavily drayage intensive island booths. Most of them packed in a crate or 2 crates. They weren't significant. They just found their spending overall, because they group all of that under events, was in excess of what they were doing. So they pulled the plug on it. And then at that point, they wanted to know, so what is it going to cost for shipping for this event next December? And they were referring to December of 23 when we were having this in conversation back in October. And I thought that was a really ironic question. Seriously? We you don't even know what you want to do, or if you're going to do things. And they generally never put enough of a budget focus on their events for the size of the spaces that they go to. They basically, park a mobile home on a ranch is my best analogy for it in those 2 scenarios. But I haven't heard a lot of people pulling back their programs. I have had a number of contacts, and our team has, that have been in the tech side or tech startups, and those people we've built relationships with and started to do business with are gone. They're no longer employed by those organizations. So, and some of them pulled back on their events. Even if they were 10 by 10 or 10 by 20 programs, they might have had 18 shows and they pulled it back to 6.
All right, we're running out of time. Jay, you may be one of the last speakers.
I didn't mean to take this away, but I'm seeing shorter peaks and valleys coming out of COVID. Many of my tech clients were hungry for space and signed up for larger spaces at some cybersecurity shows. Several have backed out. Many are downsizing because of the spend, and also the planning for reduced headcount, et cetera. So I'm seeing a trend within a trend that the planning for the recession is very real in the tech world.
Okay. Harold, anything else you want to add before we start to wrap up?
Just a reminder, Louisville is going to be fun. I hope I get to see you guys face to face there.
And to layer on that, if you're interested in SKU, please reach out to Harold or Gina or Tom or Jen, so they can get you on the schedule. We expect it to fill very, very quickly. The amount of interest that we've heard and seen so far has been, I think, much more than we've seen in the past. We've always kind of filled it, but this one is going to fill pretty early. So if you're interested, please let them know. I guess one final comment is, it has been a while since we've done a classic conversation, and I'm so delighted that you guys showed up for this one. I think this has actually been one of the best ones we've ever had. So, kudos to the group here. This was a lot of fun. So thanks a lot, and have a great week, everyone. Harold, Jeannie, anything you want to add?
No.
What he said.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.